Paul, this is still such a great intro. That was really cool.
It is.
All right. So today I'm hoping this gets a little contentious. We're going to talk about sales methodologies. Because I realize I'm not a sales consultant, but I do work with a lot of sales teams, like helping them set up their HubSpot and whatnot. And so I've been reading up a lot on it. We talk a lot about sales, like consultative selling, but there's also obviously a lot of different methodologies out there. And I'm keeping it broad, right? Consultative selling, within consultative selling, there are a lot of methodologies like spin selling and challenger sale and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But so we'll keep it all as broad. So I wanted to kind of compare or talk about different ones. So the ones that we obviously there's a lot, so we can't address all of them. But we wanted to talk about transactional selling, consultative selling, solution selling, and kind of a newer, let's call it newer methodology developed by Winning by Design, which is called like sales, SaaS selling methodology or something to that effect. I thought we would start with consultative selling because it's the one that you work with the most, the one that we kind of allude to the most when we talk about sales and sales process and all that stuff. So consultative selling, can you explain it a bit? Like what is it and whatnot, and then we can take about when is it good and maybe when it's not that good.
Well, it's a good question because I think a lot of this is going to boil down to semantics, right? And really, what it boils down to is you got to ask the right questions. You got to figure things out before you're going to go sell whatever it is you're going to sell, and use the appropriate conversation and communications to make sure that you're doing the best thing for your client, right?
Right.
And that to me is a basic premise to everything. Like the sincerity and the honesty of what you're selling is first and foremost on the line, right? If you're going to be selling something that is just to push it and to be a peddler of something that people don't need, well, then you're a peddler, right? I don't care what methodology you're using. You can even be a very good consultative seller and still be a peddler if you're not really helping out your clients.
Fair enough.
So consultative sales is really, it's the concept that you're, basically acting like a consultant. You're asking questions. You're building your credibility by understanding the reality of your client. And what you're trying to do is make your sale connected to the advantages that your client's going to have in reaching their objectives in an easier fashion. My God, that was a long sentence. So it's ensuring that your solution or your product will help them achieve their objectives.
Right.
So whatever it might be. And you're consultative in that you are asking the right questions and you become a partner and you're sitting on the same side of the table as them in trying to solve their problems. You're not it's not what you're selling so much as what you're going to help them to achieve. To me, that's the importance of consultative sales. And I would say, and this is where it might get contentious, I would say any sales methodology should ensure that you're helping achieve your client's objectives.
Right, of course.
Then what are you? Shyster, right?
Yeah, of course. And I mean, and I guess, that's the undercurrent here, right? Like you should be achieving that. There's just different ways to maybe achieve that according to different models out there. But from some of our conversations, consultative selling obviously works well. It is kind of like one of the bigger sales methodologies out there right now. And I think what I've heard in terms of a challenge that some people have of it is that it can take long. And you've even mentioned it, right? Sometimes you might need 2, 3, and then every time like there's a new decision maker involved all of a sudden, and you have to not restart, but you kind of go back into. And so that, not that it makes your sales process long, because it could still be short, right? On the flip side, you could do like all your stages in one meeting, right? If you're hooking up with the client, you have the right decision maker and so on and so forth. But that's one thing, right? Is like ultimately it's a sales methodology that fits maybe larger sales to a certain extent. Would you agree with that?
I would say it's a methodology that obviously has to be worth the amount of weight you put into it. If you're selling a $10 pencil and you're using consultative sales and you're talking to the person for 3 months, I'm using a ridiculous example, but you know what I'm saying. So I was talking to a client this week who sells a pretty simple monthly subscription on a very simple product. Is it going to be consultative? Well, it depends on the full value of the contract, which probably falls into SaaS, because this is definitely SaaS. So you're still consulting to figure out what the client needs to offer the right solution, but you might not be it might not be efficient for you to have a long conversation. I mean, a lot of what you sell, if it's more transactional, you might not even have a client discussion. They might just go on your website and you're just going to have a quick email send out and a few touch points, and boom, it's a transactional sale. Or you're in a store. Well, then if you walk into a guitar store, I'm a guitar player, so I talk guitars a lot, and you walk in there and you see a guitar, you're like, that salesperson is not using consultative sales. He's going to ask you a couple of questions, but he's not going to ask you the objective of why you're buying this guitar, right?
Right. And that's it. There's
indirectly you might say, why do you want this guitar? But he's not going to have this long discussion with you, because ultimately the product is the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not, you're not looking for you might be looking for a solution to something, but ultimately you've made those decisions. So unless you're buying a really specific type of guitar for a specific reason, but if you're just going in there buying guitar, usually it's because you think it looks nice, it sounds nice, and it's fun, it brings you pleasure, right? You're not gonna, most people are not buying a guitar to make their album that they're going to make $1 bazillion on. So there is some consultation, I think, in any kind of selling, even transactional. You're asking a couple of questions. Someone walks into the pen store, the fancy pen store, it's a very transactional sale. The guy's gonna say, well, why are you looking for a pen, right? I just need one quickly to sign a contract. Okay, well, here you go, $2 Bic pen. I love pens. I've been doing it for years and years. I do calligraphy. Okay, well then that's a different conversation, right? But it's still not consultative. There's the minimal consultation going in there, but it's a transactional sale. And it should be a transactional sale. Yeah. And a lot of people think, because Paul, you're a consultative salesperson, and that's a little bit what you're hoping for. You don't believe in any other form of sale. That's totally not. And I'm disappointed.
I'm disappointed.
I really think
no, but I know that. I mean, I'm disappointed because I would make it entertaining, but I know that when we've talked about different sales methodologies, but what I like what you said is it's important to consultative selling is great, and that's where maybe where I see one of the other methodologies we talked about in the intro is solution selling, which I see it kind of more of a consultative light, right? Which would be your guitar store example, right? When you're selling a low cost amount, right? Anything maybe once I worked a long time ago with a client where it was $4 a month subscription, right? They were getting so many inbound leads that it was if the person's not making a decision within 2-3 days, it wasn't just worth it for the company, for the sales rep to dive deeper and to have a second meeting with another decision. It's, what I mean? The value, but yes, you're still trying to figure out why do they want a guitar, or why do they want a piece of software? Okay, well, let's say it's accounting. Well, our accounting team's having a hard time keeping track of all the accounts payable or accounts receivable. We need something that's a little more intuitive. Great, here's what our product does. It's $4 a month. Let's do it. And but if they're well, let me go get back to my boss and then we'll see, and that's fine. But I'm not going to follow up with you. I'm not going to have a deeper conversation with you than that.
And here's where I'll give you some juice: is that I do think that at all levels, forget the semantics. You are doing a certain amount of consultation to figure out what your client wants. So whether one question or a series of questions built on trying to build a relationship where you understand their objectives, you're always going to ask a few questions, right? And you might be doing those, or the person might be self-identifying themselves by, going through your website and sort of auto qualifying themselves for that first conversation, right? So they go on your website, they decide they want to buy this kind of pair of pants, and then it says, talk to whoever because, whatever special pants. Well, a person on the other end of the phone who's working in customer service it's not going to start using consultative sales. Oh, what are you going to do with those pens? And what's that going to help you achieve?
That would sound weird, right? But it's funny because we're laughing about it, but it would sound weird, right? Like there's also like the reality of your sale, which is like sometimes people don't want to divulge what they don't want to do. But
Yeah, it's like,
that's
piss
a whole
off,
other
man. I'm
story.
buying the pants because I like them. Would you care if I'm going to go dancing with them tonight, or ask my wife to marry? It's like so yeah. In that sense, you're an idiot if you're trying to be, it might be good to practice and whatever, but it's you've got to understand, and that's where regardless of what we call these things, it's all really using logic and what humans love to do. And if you look at all these names, whether it's consultative, transactional, provocative, solution selling, SaaS selling, what we're doing is we're building boxes around what it is we're trying to sell, right?
Yeah.
So when it's a SaaS, we're saying, well, what are the things you need to do when you're selling a SaaS? Well, you still need to connect with the client. The client still has to feel that the product you're selling them is going to help them achieve what they're trying to do. But what you're really saying is, okay, you boneheaded moron, these are the kind of questions you should be asking. Don't go ask the person what the motivation is behind, the ultimate sales motivation is behind wanting to buy a pair of pants.
You're obsessed with pants. That's awesome.
Unless you're gold pants and you're, I don't know, you're Beyonce and you're going to be playing at the whatever, then you're
probably getting them for free. So that's the story.
Yeah, or you're paying $500,000 for them because they're diamond studded and they're part of your show. But you know what I'm saying. But even then, there's going to be consultative sales there because person say, okay, Beyonce, why are you buying these pants? Like if you're willing to pay $100,000 or whatever, $500,000 for a pair of pants, well, maybe they're you have to ask a few more questions.
Yeah. So the one that goes against a bit of everything that we've just said is maybe the transactional selling, which and I wanted to talk about that one a bit also because and this is my limited experience with the people that I've worked with, is that transactional selling is making a big comeback, whatever, in B2B selling, right? Because and you just said it before, right? Well, somebody could buy something off our website, and more people are doing that, and we're seeing it in like traditional companies. We're seeing it where there's like this kind of e-commerce component, but ultimately that's a transactional sale, right? I visit your website, I go check out your catalog, whether that's ball bearings or a software or whatnot, and I click buy and I buy it, and there's nobody to talk to really at the end of the day. But it is a sales methodology, right? You still have to put thought into the process that somebody's going to follow and to make that as seamless as possible. And how are they going to buy my product? It's not, and I'm seeing that a lot where there's like, oh, we can buy it, but there's no thought really put into how somebody buys, because especially in B2B, we're so used to like, you got to talk to sales. But when you take sales out of the equation completely, like an individual, there's still a lot of thought about what needs to go, what the steps a person has to go through to purchase your product. And that is a transactional sale, right? There's nobody that's going to ask you any questions or whatnot.
Well, what I find usually happens in a B2B setting is when the demand goes up, right? When the demand goes up in general, when it's a strong economy and the demand goes up for your product, usually you can afford yourself to become more transactional because they want you.
Yeah.
You don't need to, they're the ones opting in and you're the one who's saying, hey, hold on, I'm not sure I can supply. So in essence, it does become a little more transactional. If I can use a guitar example again, let's say you're a guitar store and you're starving and one client walks in, well, you might spend 2 hours with that client having a chat with them, convincing to buy the guitar that's on your wall. Well, conversely, if you're a guitar store and you got 100 people come in every day and you only have 10 guitars to sell, it's going to become a little more transactional, and you're just going to say, hey, look, that guitar's $10,000. Want it?
Yeah.
And if you don't want it, the guy right behind you is going to buy it. So that tends to drive sort of the sales approach. Now, that's not necessarily good for the consumer, but if there's a high demand, it's like buying a house right now, right? I mean, in the market, I think it's like this, at least all over North America, in most large markets, like people are bidding over asking price. Well, that's pretty transactional. There's not a lot of consultative selling going on there.
No. What I'm seeing too, though, is as like you mentioned pens before, right? As Amazon and these companies like Shopify and their whole network and all that stuff, people are getting used to buying online, and obviously on a more personal level, but that starts meaning that there's some things that they want to be able to buy online in a B2B setting without having to jump all through all your hoops, right? Of talking to the salesperson to talk to, and I think that's often neglected, right? Like we're so used to like, oh well, but do you really need a salesperson? Like, is your price point really worth it? Can they just buy?
Let me give you a perfect example. I've got a client who sells services, and they have different levels of services. So they want to get more into the enterprise game. Right now, a lot of the services they sell are marketing inbound, right? So they're coming through marketing, and there's not an enormous amount of consultative selling there because there's a demand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just servicing. And so that's a little more transactional, right? But as they want to keep those people and upsell them, then there's a little bit of consultative selling going on. And now they want to really open up the enterprise market, who that enterprise market has a choice of going whoever they want, and they're not going to find you online like most of their clients are. You have to reach out to them. That has to be a transactional sale. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a solution-based sale. It's not going to be, it has to be consultative selling. It can't be transactional. It can't be solution. There's probably, you talk about SaaS selling. Well, there too, as you're trying to upgrade them and you're trying to create a long-term relationship with them, there's some consultative selling happening there because you need to understand your client's objective to be able to go there. So even with the same product, depending who you're trying to reach and the size of the client, you might be applying transactional sales here and or SaaS transactional here and SaaS consultative over here.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting point that I want to get back to in a couple of minutes. But the last one I wanted to talk about was this kind of, like I said, maybe more recent or whatever, developed by Winning by Design, which is like more SaaS. I don't know exactly how they call it, SaaS methodology, sales methodology or something to that effect. And because their thesis is like a lot of the sales right now or sales methodologies are very focused on the sale, but which is fine, makes sense. But in SaaS companies that sell more on a monthly or annual recurring revenue, monthly or annual basis, is that a lot of the profit actually comes much later, not at the sale, right? Like, because if you're charging somebody, even if it's $1,000 a month, obviously on month one when the sale closes, you haven't made any money. It might take you 6 months, 12 months, 24 months before you start seeing profit.
Well, then your job becomes to retain that client for that period of time, right?
Yeah.
So there's maintenance. So there's a lot of account management as you go along.
But and it's also a matter of making sure that account management and marketing and sales speak to each other, because technically if sales is closing people that are a bad fit so that they can get a commission in the short term, but in the long run, you're losing all these customers. And fine, account management has their thing to do, of course, but it goes from the top. If marketing is marketing to the wrong people, which means that sales is selling to the wrong people, and then account management is holding the bag and like skipping out and losing all these customers, that's not good for the business in the long run. And so that methodology kind of says more. What's that?
So I'll be controversial because, sorry, I think I cut you off. Sorry, there was a
no, go for it.
So here's when I want to be controversial. I would say that SaaS selling, the type of SaaS selling you're talking about, is an extension of consultative selling.
Yeah.
Because you're being consultative in over a period of time. So it's semantics, but you're really just maintaining the amount of touch points to make sure that client is happy along the way. But like you said, I think you're saying it before, at first your touch points are more frequent, and as you see that they're happy, well, then they might be reducing, and then the profitability goes up because you've done your work and they're staying with you, and then after a few years you're profitable. But that is an applied, intelligent form of consultative selling, but I guess you could branch it off into its own.
I think the goal is less a matter of, you're right. I mean, fundamentally, you need to be able to sell a solution that works for your customer, right? And that happens through questioning. I think the goal there is it's less about focusing on day one, like sales one, and more about day 722 when profit comes in, and it's like and so it's more a matter of like impacting the questioning that a salesperson will do or messaging that marketing will publish, because it's less about what's going to happen the day you sign and more about what's going to happen 726 days later.
Or the continuation, right? So
Yeah.
it's about closing it now, but to maintain a relationship that will increase the profitability as you go along. So I don't really care what you call it. You call it consultative, SaaS, whatever. Really, it's what it is that you're trying to do. So what I like about these other methodology names is that it makes you think about a form of selling in a specific context.
Yeah.
And that's important. So am I hell bent on having a specific exact methodology for every sale? No, because I think you're a moron. Like I said, even if you, I'm using harsh words today. And even if you go in to buy your pair of pants and the person says, well, I learned this methodology. Well, then you're just not connecting with what you're trying to do, right? So there's the value of what you're trying to do. And really what we're saying in SaaS is the value comes down the line as you accumulate those monthly fees over time, then it becomes more valuable.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is I need to understand what it is that I'm trying to get out of this, of course, but you also have to understand what your client's trying to get out of this, right?
Yeah.
And even in transactional sales, like if I go in, buying a car can be transactional or consultative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going in to buy a Bentley, and I'm spending, I don't know, $1 bazillion, whatever Bentley costs, I don't know, let's say $500,000. Someone might say, well, that's a big price ticket, so you need to be consultative, but not necessarily. If the person comes in super rich, he's buying his, 50th car, and he's got $500,000 in his hands, and he says, I want that white Bentley with the red seats one. Can you have it delivered? It's transactional.
Yeah. Of course, it's contextual, right? If you're selling like a $10,000 a month software to a company that makes like $30 billion a year, obviously you still need to be consultative in that there's a lot of decision makers and it's not a B2C sale, but the dynamics are very different than if you're selling a $10,000 a month software to a company that makes $1 million, right?
This is where we will argue, my friend. I disagree with you because your $10,000 a month software, it's what it's going to bring your client, right?
Yeah.
So if that $10,000 a month client's going to help that $300 million client to get to $1 billion, well, it's a huge sale.
I'm just saying that somebody who's just doesn't have the even if at the long run, like I'm making $1 million and your software will help you make 20 million, but today I'm having a hard time paying it for it. It's a very different sale than somebody who's
and you see, I disagree with you there because that's qualification, because if really there's a true advantage, even if you're going to have a hard time paying it now, if it's sort of like saying, hey, you're just starting out, you're scratching all your cents together, you got this great idea, but you're having a hard time paying for your monthly rent for that manufacturing, but you really believe in it, well, you need to get that space, you need to get that software to help you get going, because there's a huge upside on the other side of the game. What you're saying is there might be less resistance from the person buying.
Fair enough.
Well, essentially, it's still a consultative sale, but the guy who's making 300 million, there might be less resistance because it's a drop in the bucket. Yeah. But you still need to have some consultation or understand what the objectives are. If he's just saying, we're just going to add it to the other roster of a bazillion softwares we have, that's one thing. But to me, transactional is very much usually a product. It's very rarely a service, but then I don't know, someone might comment.
I mean, you could, right? You could sell your services on a transactional. I go to your website and I buy like a sales process online. Like I don't talk to you, right? It's just like, I want a sales process. I go, this is the price. I sign off on it, it charges their credit card and boom. And then you get started on the project. Like I think everything can potentially be sold. Not everything, but a lot of stuff can be sold on a transactional basis. There just has to be a need for it or a market for it. And that's kind of what I want to end on, because I do have to go soon. And it's something where you said before, right? Where you can be one company and have a transactional component, right? And you can have like a consultative component to it. And I find like where, what I'd like to draw people's attention to is that those are very different ways of marketing and selling and servicing, right? And I find a lot of companies forget that, right? They were small markets, so it's very solution focused, very like quick sale, quick turnaround, whether you call it solution selling or consultative selling, whatever, quick turnaround. And all of a sudden we want to hit the enterprise space, and they're trying to go about it the same way, and it's failing because they don't realize that now, wait. Before I used to sell to individuals or very small businesses. So it's fine that my salesperson spent 15 minutes, 30 minutes on the phone with them and then never spoke with them again. But when I'm talking to enterprise and they're not set up, like they don't have their right sales process in place, their CRM isn't set up to do it, and they fail. And I feel like I see a lot of companies forgetting that when we're approaching a market differently, like a different part of the market, let's say, we need to address how we're selling and ultimately marketing and servicing them as well.
Totally agree, because what it is what all these different sales methodologies permit you to do is really be focused on what it is. Again, it's really all about the client. It's like, what does the client need? And if you're doing it properly, well, then you're going to use the right methodology to get there. But it's having a sense. It's sort of taking what human beings have been doing for, as long as we've been communicating, and categorizing it into a form that makes sense for other people to understand. The concept of categorizing a methodology came from the fact that someone was really good at doing something. He said, well, let's write it down. And then we gave it a name. So that's what it boils down to, right? And then you tweak it and you use it differently. Say, well, when I do this, it helps. But it's all things that people have been doing for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So it's out there. So anyways, you got a hard stop. So
yeah, I mean, thanks for indulging me in this. It's just I was like thinking about it recently as I saw a few people launch different product lines and realizing that, obviously it's early stage, so it's normal, but that there's not, I'm seeing that there's often not a lot of thought put into how is my customer going to buy this, right? And if I'm used to doing it one way, which is fine, it's great, and you can launch a new product and sell it in the same way if it's for a similar type of market. But if it's for a different market and the customer's going to buy it transactionally or consultatively, or you've developed a software solution to it, you need to spend the time it takes to review how that client's going to buy and how are you going to address that need, right? And if I need to have a salesperson that's going to be in charge of my enterprise salesperson or salespeople or whatever, well, I need to work with somebody like you and build that sales process and maybe coach them and maybe coach my managers on how to coach them, because we're used to doing this one-click sale, right? It's just like a one-call sale, right? They call, you want it, good, you don't, okay, bye. But if you can't apply that in an enterprise space, or can't apply that in a transactional space.
Yeah. And you're totally right. So it really boils down to understanding two things. What's the value of what you sell, like monetarily? How much is it going to bring to you? So how much effort can you afford to put into it? And what's the value to your client?
Yeah.
And what kind of product is it, and how does it adjust to what you're trying to do? Right?
Yeah. And I would say, the other thing is also, how's my client going to buy, right? Like, does it make sense that we're going to make them jump through, make them make them go through a discovery call, make them go through, does it make sense? And I think a lot of people are like, well, my sales team is set up to do consultative, like long-term selling, so that's how we're going to sell it. But does it make sense to sell that way?
I totally agree with you. If I'm trying to think of a B2B setting where sometimes, you can just click a button and you've got what you need, right? If you're, I don't know, something that is simple and straightforward, if you're buying, I don't know, screws for a big industry, and you just need to be galvanized at a certain length, you don't need a consultative salesperson.
No.
It's a commodity. It's super transactional, even though it's B2B. So, and that's maybe one extreme. Someone's probably going to comment and say, well, maybe you do need to have different screws and have a conversation. Yes, that's the thing.
Cool. Paul, as always, this was fun.
Yes.
We'll see you again next week. So there's a little change of schedule. So our guest is actually coming next week. That's on me.
Yes.
But this was fun. Looking forward to it.
Always is. Thanks, Fab. Have a great week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.